just trying to figure out what this absolute maniac is up to.
Snowy, you calm down, all right? This week, me, Will and Snowy are going to be chatting about the innovations and future of psychology, right?
Yep.
See you in a bit, Snowy.
AI.
Medicine.
What else are we talking about?
Like therapies and stuff. Just going to have a little general
Third wave,
chat.
yeah.
Exactly.
DBT, ACT, CFT.
And whatever comes into our head. All
Wonderful.
the little bits.
Yeah.
Should be grand. Hope you enjoy.
Wonderful. We're going to start with AI.
Let's do it.
Do you want to begin?
Okay, so...
Dishwasher's done.
Yeah, so pick that up. Yeah, so I guess... So AI, artificial intelligence, is going to be introduced into psychology in loads of different ways. Firstly, in like a automated... God, hopefully that's the last beat. An automated response to people in like a chat service kind of thing, give like low intensity therapy from an AI. I guess that's the first place to start on it, really, isn't it?
Yeah, sort of ChatGPT and...
Yeah, but therapy
yeah.
GDPT.
I think a lot of people in our field will dislike it because we provide the emotional aspect, but I think that's sort of overlooked. I think its benefit far outweighs these little nuances that we provide, and not to say that we should be obsolete or anything like that, but its contribution and the way it's sort of this feedback loop that it provides, and that it builds so quickly and that it doesn't require much, and then once it's off, it elevates. And I think that's like amazing, and that is so good for people with low level issues, disorders, etc.
I completely agree. When I was looking at stats for my university work, so 40% of people with depression don't get access to any help, psychological help. 64% of people with anxiety disorders don't get any help at all from the NHS. And this is where this slots in perfectly. And you think, we do psychology for what reason? To help people. Most people do it.
And this is a facilitation to help people, isn't it?
Yeah. So I understand, like, within our industry, we're hesitant to like hand over reins to the AI because we know the like impact of bad responses and etc., and also like it's scary that it might be cutting us out of a job, maybe, or some of us.
But I don't think we should be threatened by that.
I agree. I think you should get on board with it, be on the right side of utilising technology.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
And something that you were mentioning with the anxiety and depression, how many people don't get to see anyone, is that it's also good for people that don't seek
diagnosis, therapy.
Yes, that's it. People that don't seek help initially to get a diagnosis. People with eating disorders often suffer from like shame and guilt and stuff, and so like the vast majority of the eating disorder population aren't actually clinically having eating disorders, and that a lot of people, they feel so much shame and guilt about it is they also don't see it as a disorder, and so they don't consult people. It's more like a lifestyle of poor eating habits and maladaptive coping mechanisms and stuff, especially with stuff like binge eating. People don't recognise binge eating to be an issue. I think who's the cricket player that's spoken openly about it, the new Top Gear presenter.
Oh, Freddie Flintoff.
There you are. He's cricket, isn't he?
Yeah, massive.
Yeah, there you are.
Great
Yeah. So I don't want to poorly represent this, but I think it's bulimia and suffered with binge, which is quite common.
And he was
in
an
males.
alcoholic.
Yeah. And he said that everyone, like all his mates did it. You went on a night out or whatever, you're a cricket player, you have a load of pizza, a load of fast food, and can't be doing that. So he went and like got it all out of his system, basically. Yeah.
And that just stuck with him.
And that was a method. Is that when you're out partying and with your mates and stuff, you can't afford to have all these calories and all this indulgence, and so he felt like he had to throw it all up basically, and that he'd also have binge episodes as well, so in secret. And he talks about this openly now and stuff, and saying that he didn't recognise it as being a thing initially, and like that's where AI could have stepped in. He could have consulted an AI, not even like confrontationally. He could have just messaged the AI and been like, is purging normal, natural? And it would have been like, regular purging is not a normal occurrence. You may want to consult someone about this. This could be signs of an eating disorder.
Yeah.
And that is...
It doesn't seem quite as confrontational, or as like...
is that he doesn't need to ring up an appointment or anything, or he doesn't need to identify it initially and be like, oh my god, I have an eating disorder, because he might not be that self-aware, or he might not identify it as that. And so if he had this conversation with a chatbot, it might have passed out that maybe he needed to seek help earlier.
Yeah.
And that's fantastic.
I think that's where I see it as. I see it as maybe the role of a GP ish
Per se.
Without, if you take, say, a simple case with no comorbidities, I think that a ChatGPT style, a woe chat kind of thing is perfect. But when you get into more complex things where they're having to deal with multiple factors, it's not quite there at the moment, but it probably will be.
But that's the point though, isn't it? Is that it frees up this sort of low level baggage that's sort of consuming the waiting lists and stuff. And that's sort of the bottleneck, is that all these very high level disorders need special care and do need this sort of person-centered one-to-one approach. Whereas low level things and stuff that may be subclinical and just require a bit of support can be alleviated so quickly.
100%.
And it's not to be dismissive.
Yeah, and when we live in a world where everything's run by... Is it all good?
Yeah.
If when we live in a world where everything's run by finances, we should be like chomping at the bits to get involved with AI at every single instance.
So cost effective, isn't it?
That's the NHS's like, oh my god, it's cost effective, let's do it.
Yeah, exactly. That's their bottom line, isn't it? Really, it doesn't. Who cares about efficacy? Sort of, if it's not cost effective. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then obviously, and it can just be applied twofold.
Let's give an example. So there's multiple things that use AI to kind of help people. One that I'm kind of involved with, but will be involved with more in the future, is WoChat, which is an AI thing for low intensity CBT, specifically for CBT. There are ones that will take a more psychodynamic point of view, which I think are currently less effective, but that's because they need more data to accrue.
That's a more nuanced aspect.
Exactly.
Yeah. This isn't.
Yeah, there's more of a structure which helps AI be effective with CBT. And they're in partnership with UCL. And oh my gosh, UCL's just been feeding it research, like data points, and giving it access to all of its literature. So it knows so much, and all the lecturers are analysing stuff, and it's great. I think it's really good. And I've been using it a little bit, and it's really good for those understanding coping mechanisms and identifying problems and identifying triggers for your emotions. It's less beneficial for if you're in that crisis moment. So if you are recognising that you're wanting to stop feeling the way that you are, maybe don't have that psychoeducation about what to do or why you're feeling the way that you are, but it's mild to moderate. It's not, you're not feeling suicidal, that kind of thing, then this kind of thing's perfect. And I think it's great. It's got a long way to go, but it hasn't everything. That's why it's exciting.
I don't think it has got a long way to go.
You don't think?
I think it sort of compounds sort of what we're on about this feedback loop that it takes on. And I think as soon as it has an uptake of so many people, I think it's going to lift off immediately. And so it's sort of the deal with the Tesla and the autopilot thing, is that the training for it you'd think would take years and years and years. And I remember this being like sort of like the philosophical question at school would be like, could autonomous cars exist in society? What would happen if it came to a crash? Would it turn into the old lady? Would it go straight into the truck and kill yourself, or would it veer off and go into another car and cause an accident and stuff like that? And there was all sort of this like mystique and stuff, and these problems that might occur, and yet it's out there now. It functions fine, and sort of as well as the capture. I don't know what capture is. The when you go on a website and it says, "Are you a human?"
Oh yeah.
that's called capture,
Right.
and it was updated initially. So a guy invented it to make sure that you're a real person, and so it used you to pick certain pictures, and then the correct answer would let you through. And then it was updated, and it was called recapture, and that's where it's pictures, and it's like pick the traffic lights, or I was like circle all the bits of a motorcyclist or whatever, and that, unknowingly by everyone, was training AI in the background, because what it's doing is you're telling the computer what is a traffic light, what is a motorcyclist, because you're giving it the right response.
That is, God, they're cheeky with it.
So
aren't
the
they?
initial one was text, and that's called capture, and so that was like 76AB3, and that's all skewed and like slanty and a bit distorted, and you were telling it the correct response. And so you were priming this computer. This wasn't even AI. You're just telling them what was right and what was wrong. And that was sort of the early days of AI and how that was sort of primed on that. And then it got updated to the pictures. And so now the computer has been trained for almost 10 years now on where traffic lights are, cars, buses, vans, parking things, all just from this little square. Cool. And so it's been trained on this for ages. And so it's so advanced, and that's so applicable. And you see that with all sorts of stuff. Facebook at the moment, it can, just from the stuff that you like and repost and post, it can determine what personality traits you have within Ocean. So openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. It can tell what personality types you are just from Facebook likes, relikes, retweets, whatever, quotes, posting on your wall and stuff. And so this isn't even AI. This is just
data.
Yeah, exactly. And so with the inclusion of AI, it's just compounding so fast. It's unbelievable. Yeah.
I don't think we have like the ability to compound how smart it is.
Yeah, we can't comprehend.
It's so clever. Like,
God.
It's going to be able to generate responses that are so tailored and so accurate to what would be a perfect response. If you had because these new therapy things, they're not using the same engines that a ChatGPT is or a Google is, but they'll get there. When the NHS or these big organisations, or when a Google is like, yo, I want to invest in therapy, and they pump hundreds of millions of pounds into these therapy
because at the
AIs.
moment it's just people messing around, isn't it? Basically, there's not, well, to an extent, there's not much proper funding that's going in. It's people just dabbling, doing little bits, testing, finding the water, and seeing the ability of AI and stuff. This guy's dog was really ill. He took it to multiple vets, and they didn't know what was up with him because he had multiple comorbid things, and so it was hard to specify what was up because there were so many compounding things that all interlocked. And he was like, I can't let my dog die. It's been in the family for years. We've got so many memories with it. There must be something we can do. And it wasn't old age. It wasn't like, oh, it's his time sort of thing. It was, oh my God, there's something wrong with his immune system or something that could be cured if we know what the causation is. And so he went to all these vets who all gave him different diagnoses and different reasons why, and he had a blood panel done, this dog.
God, this must have cost him a fortune.
Yeah, in America as well, so this must have been expensive, so they really care about this dog. And nobody could figure out what was up with it. And so he plugged the blood work into ChatGPT, and it gave multiple diagnoses of what it potentially could be. And he went through the list and just went, okay, vet number 1 said it was this, it wasn't. Stroke it off, stroke it off, strike it off, strike it off, strike it off. What's left? These 2. He went to a new vet, proffered to them these 2 different diagnoses and said, could it be this, could it be this? And the vet went, oh my God, you're a genius. It's one of these. How did you know about that? And he obviously didn't say it was ChatGPT.
Is that, I just guessed.
Just a hunch or whatever, yeah. And it cured the dog. They found out what it was.
Such a cool
and
story.
He survived. And it was all because ChatGPT gave multiple diagnoses that a human had forgot about, or maybe didn't think about, or sort of like House. I don't know if you ever watched House.
No, but I can understand.
It's sort of a series based around that. Is no one could figure it out, and then House, the doctor, his nose is like, oh my God, it was a pollen allergy. She was outside. Oh my God, that's what
obvious.
It was.
Like a Sherlock Holmes kind of thing.
It's like she's like half an hour away from dying. I'm like, oh my God, we've got to find out what it is. And they go, oh, I figured it out. on New York Street on 3rd Avenue or whatever.
There's a baguette store.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
They use dry use.
crunching it. Yeah, exactly. So it's stuff like that, and that's exactly the premise of what a house is that it's like, that's what it is. Nobody can figure it out. It's impossible. And he used ChatGPT to do that.
I mean, extrapolate that out, right, to how many people access mental health things in the UK, and how many lives that's going to affect.
Mm-hmm.
It's insane how powerful this could be, and why it needs to get more attention.
I think
100%.
Counselling could be done there. I know emotion's required, but if we're talking about just advice and psychoeducation again, it's going to be because stuff that aren't disorders. So maybe grief. I think grief would be quite good for ChatGPT, so you can tell it thoughts or feelings, or if you need a hand with something, or if you're having a rough day, and it'll just give you some coping mechanisms, some activities, or some homework. It'll give you some bits to do, a little sheet to fill in or something. I feel like
100%.
It's just readily available, isn't it?
And we think about as if we're chatting to this AI as if you're chatting to your Alexa or your Google Home, and it's that kind of response. It will not be like that. It will be like you're talking to a person.
Especially because it's a language model as well.
Yeah.
So it's literal, it's sort of based around nuanced terms and stuff. Because you can get it to impersonate Sigmund Freud, and it will talk like Sigmund Freud.
Exactly like him. In his dialect and in mannerisms and etc. etc.
Yeah.
And like you could tell it anything and it would remember it and link back to it and use context and link your emotions and also have access to every psychological therapy ever, and all the psychoanalytical information and psychoeducation information. It has everything at its fingertips and can communicate you in the best way that it statistically thinks is best to communicate to you with.
And
It's
that's
going to be crazy.
And that's it's like the economic concept about the market's always been efficient. Is that this AI is not going to have an off day or be bad or anything, or
it will.
It will malfunction, it will need feeding, it will need more information and sort of stuff. But as that all compounds, as we've said multiple times, as it bubbles up constantly, at some point it'll reach a threshold where it's just
insane,
almost 100% efficient, and like lossless and completely ready and like primed
to help people
to such a fine-tuned degree. It'll be unbelievable.
And I understand the world's like fear of that. I understand it, but you look at like these mental health problems aren't something to be taken lightly. To be able to help somebody properly and impactfully is huge. And although like that individual might have a little bit of hesitancy to use something that's AI, they're not thinking, oh my god, actually AI is a bit weird, I'm not going to do it. This is serious for them. That's impacting their life hugely. And most people are going to be like, I'm going to snap it up because they don't want to feel like that. Like, depression isn't nice, having an eating disorder isn't nice, having anxiety isn't nice. You're going to try and improve it, and that's a very non-invasive way to try and improve yourself that doesn't take too much like self-compassion or agency.
Yeah, I think that's great about it, something we sort of touched on, but within psych of illness you see this, it's called like patient delay, and then you have like GP delay basically. It's like first notice of symptoms, what's the delay between you seeking help or consulting someone, and that barrier's just reduced massively.
Hugely,
and that covers all spectrums. So with the eating disorder thing we said earlier, there's no patient delay from Freddie Flintoff. It's him. There's no patient delay there. He doesn't go, oh, it might be or it might not be. Oh, I won't bother making that appointment. Leaves it for 15 years or however long. It's like, okay, I can just go on my phone, type in a few things. Sort of like a curated WebMD.
And how many people, as psychologists, we're like, therapies, you should have therapy all the time, even if you're feeling great. So it shouldn't even be, oh, I've got this problem, or like blah, 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 blah. Imagine everybody in the country has access to one system, and it's
It's primed
advised
on all the latest research, past cases, everything. It's fuel on
And
day.
even if you're feeling good, the government recommends that every 4 months you go and have a 5-minute chat with this as like a checkup, as if it's your GP, but for your mental
you can
well-being.
just have a quarterly well-being check-in.
Yeah.
With a chatbot.
Yeah.
And that could be facilitated by one person who's monitoring five at the same time or something.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that you've got a ClinSci or a GP behind 5 of those screens. And it's like, okay, this needs more support. Okay, I can now draw to them or whatever. I can press a button and it'll say, would you like to contact a GP?
Yeah.
And it'll say, sure, this is out of the AI's hand. Just give it a call. Doctor picks up immediately because his caseload has now been taken away from him.
Yeah. And that would be amazing.
Yeah, be fantastic.
Amazing. And like exactly what you were saying, that participant, wait list before you get access to help would be reduced significantly.
Yeah.
And even that GP waiting time would be reduced massively because, as we were on about with therapy, that's going to take a massive waiting list off.
And what you've got to think about is that although it can't do more difficult cases, is that it's freeing up easier low-level things so that more care can be considered to those.
Yeah.
And that when people think about AI, they think, oh, but it's not, oh, but it can't do that, oh, but it can't do bipolar, oh, it can't do PTSD, oh, it can't do psychoanalytic. It's like, okay, recognise that, but it can do all these low-level disorders that are taking away apt care from those people who do need more care. Yeah.
So on that step care model, you're thinking like step 1, 2, and maybe some of 3. All this could be done by pretty much AI until you're getting to high intensity therapies. And even that, I read a study not too long ago about AI generating through what are they called, the goggles that give you immersive things.
Oh, the VR goggles.
Yeah, VR, virtual reality. AI generated like an exposure therapy thing for PTSD, and it was for veterans. And they did it in 2 ways. AI generated their safe space through imagery. And so when they were feeling anxious, they could go into this safe space instantly that was immersive with sound and and they could walk round it, and it was beautiful. And then to do exposure therapy of the incident or whatever it was that they were feeling anxious about or triggered their PTSD. And so it had less power of them, so they could sit in that environment and not feel anxious to them anymore. Which is crazy.
I think the exposure training, I think is brilliant.
Yeah.
It just works. It just makes sense.
And how many little instances of that will there be? Hundreds, where AI will come in and improve therapy.
It's the self capability that makes it brilliant. Because you think about exposure training. If someone's afraid of, I don't know, maybe it's an anxiety one, and they're afraid of public speaking, public places, etc. It's like, think about the sessions you'd go through with this client. You might start off with a picture of a crowded area, and then bring them out, and you take them to a coffee shop and get them to sit in a coffee shop for half an hour. And then maybe you escalate it again, and you get them to order at the coffee shop and get them to make conversation with the barista or whatever. And then you escalate further, and you take them somewhere busier and busier and busier and busier, and this exposure training gets them ready. It's like the fact that you could do this by yourself with a VR headset, and you don't need to find these correct environments, so that the AI will build these layers for you.
Yeah.
It's like, we need to get you better at this. Oh, we need to go to a coffee shop. Oh, there's no coffee shops nearby.
Yeah.
Okay, what are we going to have to do?
Or the barista's a bitch.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
like,
tells you to piss off.
Because it can't be perfect. Yeah, it's that in the real world, you're banking on correct scenarios for this exposure training, and that if you can't get that, then you can just do VR at home. It's amazing, and it'll build these layers that are all perfectly the big enough step sort of thing. Is that in the real world it might be too large of a step, and there's no intermediate one that you can go to, and it's too big of a leap for you to make. Whereas the AI will create layers, and you'll be able to...
Yeah.
It's almost like video gamifying your life sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be so cool. The study said that it didn't work with social anxiety, which was crazy.
Oh, okay.
Because apparently, it was theorising.
I think that could make sense though, because if the VR goggles, it's sort of like an immersive, isolated mask to an extent, isn't it?
Yeah, and
maybe...
also our brain is so finely tuned to spot discrepancies in people, so you could tell that it wasn't real, more so than like environments that made you anxious.
Yeah, does that make sense? Yeah.
But interesting as hell, and that's just one of probably hundreds that we don't know about.
Yeah, exactly.
Where AI is making a huge impact. I mean, when I was designing my scripts, I got AI to write me a mindfulness script.
Like a mock version.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a meditation. A 5-minute. I was like, write me a 5-minute meditation. Bushed it out. It was so similar to UCL's study. Not UCL's, it was some American university.
I also thought that'd be good for data as well. So for research, is that you could send it the mock version of your paper or an existing research paper and say, what were the drawbacks? Can you find any gaps in? Make this study airtight. Take this randomised control trial of bulimia with CBT and treatment as usual, pharmaceutical medicine or whatever. Make this airtight. What about this study was good? What about this study was bad? And it'll just list everything off. I'm like, okay, next time you need to make sure that your sample's more diverse. You need a few more people, not many. Maybe you need 5 more people. And they'll be like, your analysis could have been more fine-tuned. There's a few outliers that have skewed your data, etc. And you could, it could help in that case.
I mean, that's where all the many lectures and things
ideas,
are going. Oh my god! Don't do that. We'll be out of a job.
Yeah,
but that's
expose
fear. That is fear. And should our society be run by fear? No.
Yeah, I think that's massive. I don't know if you've watched. Well, it's probably quite popular, but Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
The not the original, the Johnny Depp version.
Yeah.
The father, what's his name, George or something? What's the boy's name? No. I don't know. The boy that wins the golden ticket. His father worked at the toothpaste factory. He's worried about innovation. Why? Because he thinks he's going to be out of a job. Oh no, turns out he now fixes the machine and makes triple the pay or whatever.
Exactly.
And he doesn't need to be there full time anymore.
It's about being on the right side of innovation.
Yeah, and I think if you're worried about it, I don't want this to be too contrarian, but I think if you're concerned about it, you either don't know enough about the field you're in, or you don't know what contribution you could make while in it, sort of thing.
I agree.
I think the people that are worried about it either shouldn't be worried about it, or maybe they're worried because they don't think they're capable enough in their current industry, and that may make them obsolete.
Yeah.
Because if you are capable, if you are well experienced or well versed and open to innovation and new things, then it should benefit your life. It should not become an issue.
100%, I agree. Yeah. I mean, and back to the point of like what AI will do in that it frees up way more time for us as budding, aspiring psychologists to get involved in psychology. There's going to be less of an importance for us to do the low intensity stuff and more to the high intensity stuff, which is where there are even more like innovations being pumped into psychology.
Is that your focus can now be drawn to like the more unknown spaces of psychology.
Exactly.
Is that you're now looking into the abyss instead of relearning what's already there. I think that's
exactly.
great.
Because an AI can learn all that stuff. If an AI can learn it, you could be taught it easily. Because it's harder for an AI to learn something than we can learn it.
Exactly. So if it's modelable, and the AI is able to learn it, then we'd be able to pick it up in no time.
Yeah. So why not pursue harder tasks
to things that the AI can't do,
Yeah.
that we are more nuanced and capable of doing.
Hell yeah. Like I know you don't. You're not a big fan of it, but I'm going to start on my favourite, CFT, which is compassion focused therapy. Why didn't you like it?
From the lecture I was given on it.
Is this your whole basis? Is from this lecture?
Yes.
Really?
Yes. I have no other exposure to CFT.
Did you listen to the podcast?
No, I've not.
Right,
because I want you to tell me about it.
Okay. Oh, bollocks.
No,
I believed you for like a second there, and then...
No, I'd rather you explain it to me.
Okay, do you want me to explain it then?
Go for it. Tell me
Okay.
about CFT. Right, shall I tell you what I know
I
about
want
CFT?
I want to know your preconceptions
Yeah,
of it.
that's what I was going to say. Shall I tell you what I've been told?
Yeah.
And not necessarily what may be true or correct. So the compassion focused therapy to me, it just seemed very wishy-washy. There wasn't much substance to it. It seemed very in tune with emotion and not very in tune with behaviour change or getting to the problem. And it seemed very based around sort of, oh, it's okay. Oh, don't worry. Oh, it's all right. You're fine the way you are, sort of thing. And it sort of seemed very construed as a victim mentality, and not to deny people of that, but that it was used unfairly as a justification for them being unwell. So maybe if someone went in and they were struggling at work, and they went in and someone provided CFT to them, they would say, oh, it's okay, or like, oh, it doesn't matter, oh, you're doing a great job, when in fact they are lazy, or they could have been doing more work, or maybe they've got something else going off at the moment and they need to bring their emotions back to more time towards it. And that my conception was that it sort of just said, you're doing great, sort of thing. And that it was a bit like
soft.
Yeah, and that it was like blowing smoke up your behind, sort of thing. Yeah.
I feel like I understand where you're coming from a little bit.
Yeah.
Because it's compassionate. Like, we're not trying to be harsh. So it's not like, yeah, you're shit. Or, yeah, you're actually doing crap, mate, at your job. Obviously, you're going to feel like crap.
But this is why I like some
terrible.
of the other ones as well,
Yeah.
some of these other third wave therapies, like ACT I really liked, which is acceptance and commitment. Yeah. And that sort of combined the two aspects of CBT. Well, it combined aspects of treatments that I thought worked and rejected those that didn't. So aspects of CBT that are rather harsh, it left behind, but sort of behaviour change aspects, it kept with it, and then took acceptance and emotion. So it sort of integrated both emotion and behaviour change, so that you had a present, and you had something to think about in the acceptance, but you also had something to strive for and get better with. And so I liked
something
ACT.
to accept and then to commit to a future.
And then DBT was also like that as well.
Great, yeah.
I loved DBT. I thought it was amazing. But with CFT, what I was told didn't resonate with me.
Okay.
So.
I have similar thoughts with DBT, have the opposite thoughts on ACT, and complete opposite thoughts on CFT. So in my mind, and obviously I've never been part of CFT therapies, I've read transcripts of therapy sessions and things, and I've read some books and quite a lot of articles and whatnot, and seminars and what blah blah blah. But yeah, so compassion focused therapy focuses on a couple of things. If we define compassion in the model of compassion focused therapy, it's identifying suffering. You recognise that you are suffering, which is that part. You come into work and I feel like crap today to your boss. And then it's saying, okay, I have empathy, or I have a desire to act on those. So take a step back. Because that's the third one. So you've identified the problem. You feel emotion towards the problem. You have empathy towards if it's somebody else, or you recognise the desire to not feel that way, is step 2, and step 3 is to act on that desire.
Okay.
So it is like promoting a behaviour change, and it's the framework works in a way that commonly, and I know it in terms of depression because that's how I've studied it, but people with depression commonly get stuck on that second spot where they've recognised that they have a mental health problem, they know there's an issue, they have a desire to feel better-ish, but then there's feelings of guilt, there's feelings of I'm not worthy of getting help, they struggle to show compassion towards themselves and struggle to do behaviours and thoughts that are compassionate towards themselves. So then the therapy kind of works on a point of evolutionary wise, we are predispositioned to think in this way. Our brain's set up in a way where if you would react to it's the Jordan Peterson lobster scenario. Okay. Where if you are a lobster and you lose a fight with another lobster, you get depressed because your social hierarchy has just been reduced.
Yeah, and then if you get beat up 3 times, your brain shrinks, basically.
Exactly.
Which is the lobster.
Compassion works in the same way. If you are uncompassionate to yourself multiple times, you believe in the fallacy that you've created in your brain.
So it's like a learnt helplessness.
Yeah, it's a cycle. Yeah, that compounds. Exactly. And you truly believe that you do not deserve help, or that you cannot do these things to help yourself because of X, Y, and Z.
That's someone that I've got for befriending is going through something like that. Is that they've sort of fallen out with self-love and their own, and sort of being compassionate, and they've sort of de-escalated down and down and down. It's sort of this vicious spiral
till life is pointless.
And they're questioning whether they should eat or not because they think it's a waste of food and stuff like that, and so it's just this vicious spiral sort of sunken down.
And you wouldn't go and think that person
it's soft.
That's saying no, you do deserve food. It's soft, would you?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
That's where she was describing it wrong. It's showing compassionate thoughts. It doesn't have to be from the therapist. It's training the person to do behaviours and thoughts that encourage those positive things.
And I think all third waves touch on that. I think maybe that's the distinguishing factor of third wave, is that it integrates the emotional aspect and sort of how we feeling about it. And that's also with the motivational interviewing, is that you're evoking before you start planning, basically. Is that you discuss current states, how you're feeling, what are the perceptions of it emotionally and stuff, and then you start to progress rather than jumping that step.
Yeah, it feels validating, doesn't it? That first step of, look, I'm struggling, and that being heard is huge. I think I differentiate the third wave things because CFT and DBT have structure, and I struggle to get my head around the structure of ACT.
Of acceptance and commitment.
Yeah, I get there is a structure to it, but I don't really understand.
I feel like a lot across the board, that's what all the third waves struggle with a little bit, is rigid structure.
But I can get my head around CFT. Like CFT, the purpose of it is to encourage self-compassionate and compassionate things for other people.
But what about the research? What about fidelity? The aspect of fidelity.
Explain what you mean.
So if we had 2 randomised control trials, CBT comparing a third wave, CFT, ACT, whatever, the rigidness of the clinicians' CBT distribution would be on par with the other RCT because it's manualised. But with third wave, would you say that they would differ? Not necessarily that quality is poorer, but sort of attentions and sort of the way they went about it would differ.
Yeah, because the techniques that I would want to learn and my thoughts and ways of being self-compassionate to myself are different to the ways that you be
And I'm not saying that it would be it would be just different words were used.
Yeah.
But like the approaches,
the whole structure
could be completely different.
Yeah.
And that is bad in a research aspect because it lacks fidelity. It's the AI could replicate CBT, and it's about this replicability. Because if you do an RCT and the therapist has only had 1 year in DBT training,
which most of them have because it's brand new therapy,
their level of competence and their level of therapy given would be completely different to someone who'd had just 2 years worth of training, or 6 months worth of training, or however, or even the experiences and different perceptions, or even different methods. And I think that is what is lacking to me, because when I was told about them in the lectures and stuff, I was like, okay, so what actually is it? What's the groundwork? Do you know what I mean? CBT is based around a model, and for diagnosing eating disorders, it follows a transdiagnostic model, which is 3 points, and you follow them all around basically, and you go in a nice little circle, and that's how it's done, sort of thing. Whereas with DBT, there's so much wiggle room and so much way to oscillate through it, that's what makes it difficult to be rigid.
I agree completely, but I
How
think
is
we're
that?
early days.
100%.
Which is why this
100%.
stuff is so cool.
It's so early. It's unbelievably early.
Yeah. I mean,
it's scarily early.
But how long has CFT been around? 10, 20 years, if that? That's a drop in the ocean.
Has CFT been manualised?
Just.
Recently? Or
what was it, 2016?
Okay.
Yeah, that's when the NHS pulled it up.
Okay. I think DBT has manualised, isn't it?
Yeah.
IPT has a manual, but that's not third wave, is it?
I don't think so.
Interpersonal.
No, I don't think so.
I don't think IPT is manualised. Yep. So that's why that's used quite frequently.
But it's the cool therapy. I mean, that's another one that can't really be.
That's the fidelity aspect that lacks, but again, it has the structure which gives it sort of grit, quality,
for statistics and things. I think that in 20 years' time, this won't be a conversation, and there will be a handbook for how to do CFT for depression, how to do CFT for anxiety, how to do CFT for personality disorders.
I don't think we're too far away. I think groundwork is being put in. I think more foundation is being put in. Like with ACT. ACT is based around sort of Buddhist philosophy and stuff, as well as Stoic sort of things, and that's why I quite like ACT. It quite resonated with me.
He's a Stoic guy, so dark and mysterious.
And so that resonated with me, and the boardroom exercise is.
What's the boardroom exercise?
So that is an ACT exercise. That is considered ACT, and so the boardroom exercise is sort of compartmentalizing your personas or selves. It's sort of Jungian mixed with Rogers, and you sort of compartmentalize yourself into categories that you perceive as sort of personas or different types of people, or maybe it's roles, so maybe mother, daughter, etc., nurse, or whatever, or maybe it's emotions, or maybe it's sad me, happy me, excited me, anxious me, and you compartmentalize yourself and sort of ask it questions from a spectator's perspective, and sort of figure out what's up, what's going off, and you sort of give each person time to speak, and that all helps you sort of realign, basically.
The different aspects of your life. Yeah.
And that's an ACT method that you can use, basically.
It's a great method.
And that's why I like ACT. I thought it was good.
Because of that model. Because of that exercise, that's it. I'm going to be an ACT therapist because of the boardroom.
It's about acceptance, but you were also asking it tough questions. Yeah. Is that you weren't going, okay, this is an issue, or okay, I'm feeling emotions.
Well, do you understand how CFT isn't that now?
Yes. I'm more clued in, yeah. So how do they differ? because they all seem rather similar now.
Yeah.
Now that we've put it together, is that it's being in tune with current emotions and about being compassionate to yourself and receiving compassion from a listening therapist or something, and then combining it with behaviour change, making steps forward.
Yeah.
How do they differ?
So the steps are different, and the theory behind your identifying thoughts is different.
Okay.
So in CFT, you're specialising on compassion, obviously, and you're like, okay, is this for non-compassionate or compassionate? Why am I thinking that way, and how can I change it? In acceptance and commitment, you're thinking, okay, this is a thought, I'm going to sit with it, I'm going to regulate my emotions and become stable, and then I'm going to do an exercise that helps me understand why I felt that way previously, and improve my emotional regulation over time, so that you can become at a standard level easier and quicker. So I see ACT as emotion regulation.
Okay.
And all the exercises are kind of that, maybe.
Oh, it's surrounding emotion, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whether it's regulation or whether it's feeding it positive emotion.
Yeah, or like your identity.
Or nurturing that aspect, yeah.
Exactly. And then what DBT is like probably the most Eastern of the three, maybe, in that like it's very let's combine how you talk to yourself and how you negotiate with yourself in some of the aspects of compassion, but more so is in how to stop yourself from arguing, how to stop that internal monologue from becoming destructive all the time, and working on, because DBT is more specific to like crisis or high intensity, like very severe mental health problems. So you're looking at people who are trying to commit suicide pretty regularly.
Yeah, so suicidal ideation is what people look for DBT for, and treatment-resistant depression.
Yeah.
Usually DBT is considered. And I think within the NHS, treatment as usual is CBT, and then if you reject it or say it's not working or you've been through it, is that they put you on DBT then, basically. Yeah.
You know, there's 7 CFT psychologists in the NHS.
7. Who are based on CFT entirely.
Who
specialise
who have
in CFT.
finished the training.
Right, just 7.
Just 7.
That's how early you are.
Yeah, that's how infant stages we're
and
talking
I think
about.
we saw that with lit reviews. So within ClinApps doing these lit reviews, and it's like, oh my god, there's only 3 studies out there that are randomised control trials on this set. Hey little buddy, there's only 3 out there or something. So like I was looking at, oh bless him. So I was looking at bulimia nervosa, CBTE, and then any other treatment approach. And the literature out there is beyond sparse.
Yeah, there's nothing.
Bulimia in adolescence, I looked at a lit review that was published in 2021, and there was only 4 papers available within the entire literature space. This was over 50 years. The intro talks about how bulimia evolved in, it was like preferentially diagnosed as bulimia nervosa in like 1983, I believe. Might have fact checked that. It was ages ago, basically, 30 years plus, and that there was only 4 quality RCTs available, of which one of them was a pilot study, so it only had 15 participants, and that was it for bulimia nervosa in adolescence. And 3 of those all came from California by the same bloke. And to think that treatment other than CBT is non-existent for RCTs, and that even CBT, it was sparse, and that the solve-all problem was some sort of SSRI combination or something like that, instead of a regular psychological treatment approach.
But I mean, I would imagine bulimia nervosa is so psychological. Like I don't know much literature at all, but I imagine that would be quite a standard, pretty test to
and
run.
the theory denotes that it is psychologically based, and that it's regarding emotions and perceptions of yourself and stuff like that, and that some of it can be trauma focused, and that a lot of it can be from childhood and stuff. And yet, one guy out of California is sort of building the world around treatments for bulimia nervosa.
Yeah.
And not to say that this guy's wrong or he's bad,
But it
but
shouldn't be up
if
to
one
one dude,
person is just producing all the literature for bulimia, then there's an issue. And something I found while doing a diss is that eating disorders is swarmed by this person. I'm going to mention that Fairburn, their name is littered across the eating disorder literature, and I think to some extent they've monopolised eating disorders, and therefore no innovation can now occur because Fairburn has monopolised the entire thing. They have the scale, they did the model, and they do the RCTs. And if that is how eating disorders is taken, it's just that one person dictates everybody's treatment and outcomes.
In the world.
Yeah, this is internationally, yeah.
It's
So
crazy.
this, yeah, which is absolutely insane and is awful. Not to say again that theirs is wrong or that it should have less credit, but if it's monopolised, then there's no innovation that's occurring, and that is awful.
That is shocking. In such a huge and diverse world with so many different needs.
Yeah, and this is eating disorders generally. So obviously you have the main three: bulimia, binge, anorexia, and then you've got eating disorders otherwise specified, which makes up actually the majority of cases. So for other things, stuff like body dysmorphia, rigid calorie tracking, non-food related things, so people that crave like bricks for magnesium and stuff like that, that are deficient
Pregnant
in
people that want
minerals.
to live.
Yep, like coal. I think that's quite common. Yeah, or they only eat pickles because they want the vinegar or whatever and the salt content.
Those TLC programs like from America where she eats a mattress. But I mean, so all those different disorders are all with that one guy's theory still.
Yes.
God.
And
Just blanketed like that.
I don't know if it's they have broadened a theory that says it encompasses all and that they all underpin the same framework.
What a load of bollocks.
Which seems such an oversight, it's unbelievable. And I know parsimony is something people look for on this Occam's razor, is that the simplest thing is most commonly right or whatever, which is the Occam's razor.
It doesn't really matter if it's commonly right. You want something that's
and they
different theories. If that's not right, what do you do?
And that it needs to be more nuanced, is that it's too broad to say that this model fits for all eating disorders, and
That is so shocking.
And that they sort of dominate the literature.
Well, you should research it, Will. This can be, in 20 years' time, all the literature's going to be Siegfried, what was it?
Fairburn.
Fairburn. Where did I get Siegfried from? That's somebody else.
So Fairburn is the one that does all the general eating disorder literature, and then Lagrange is specifically bulimia nervosa, and he's the only one that has quality RCTs available. No one else has published an RCT that's of high quality, other than Lagrange, who is the guy that came out of California, and his sample is obviously only on California.
Would you do one?
100%. I'd love to do a UK randomised control trial.
Go for it. I think you'd be great at it.
I'd love to do one.
Amazing.
I think RCTs are the foundations for newer treatments.
100%.
They are the gold standard. Whether or not they're the best doesn't matter, because if they're the gold standard, then they're what we need to seek out in order to push third wave therapies. Yeah.
I think it's all well and good getting these correlations and whatnot, and it needs to start with that. But people need to be encouraged, like even at our level of undergraduate, to try and do little RCTs or quasi experiments.
Your DIS, for example, is a little RCT.
Yeah, I think if they're just hard to do, like participants wise, it's easy to do.
I was talking to someone else about this, about the complexity of RCTs, and that you really need to sit down and ideate them so much.
Because there's so many variables that are going to mess it up.
There's a lot going off. There's a lot you need to control for. You need to think about every single step.
Yeah.
It's extremely complex and it requires probably a team of people.
Yeah, to make everything exactly the same.
To make sure everything's controlled, make sure you've got baseline levels, make sure populations are correct, etc.
Which is why I get that it doesn't happen that often for like big things. But it starts somewhere. Yeah. Shall we move on to a different area where in the psychological future?
Sure.
Unless there's anything else you wanted to talk about with those third wave therapies?
No, that's great.
Okay. What do you think about the use of psychedelics in therapy?
Interesting. I think it's a more natural approach, and I think it'd be good for. I'm quite interested in psychoanalysis and psychodynamic, and I think that'd be quite interesting in order to sort of evolve and look into personas, superego, ego ID sort of stuff,
cool.
and sort of uncovering your shadow, etc., and sort of delving into places that you wouldn't necessarily be able to look
Identity
consciously.
stuff,
Yeah, and like sort of the dream aspects is that you're then able to, and maybe, and I'm not so for it pharmacologically because I don't think medicine is the end all, do all, but maybe to facilitate other things it would be helpful. So maybe to explore trauma or to facilitate someone who's got rock bottom and needs that lift just out of it to then spiral them upwards. What do you think?
I agree completely. Everything that you just said, big tick next to it. But I think I come at it from a point where I agree that medicine isn't always the answer. It's amazing for so many people, and if you're prescribed medication, take that prescription seriously. But it's important to think about other ways to help yourself,
because it's not a long-term solution.
Yeah,
is it?
and you're not addressing causes most of the time, with mental health anyway. So, that being said, I think psychedelics, the purpose of them maybe is to enter that alternative state of mind. And what we can do in therapy within those, this is all specifically within therapy, I think, to go out and do these kind of drugs out in the random world in a non-controlled environment is scary and doesn't have the same benefits. But to do it in therapy, so I'm talking about personally about like acetoketamine and psilocybin and a THC. They're kind of the big three that I pretty much know about. There's like the DMT5 and that kind of thing, but I think they're maybe too far away.
Yeah, stuff like DMT and ashwagandha are a little too extreme and they're less controllable, aren't they?
Yeah.
They can spiral out rather badly, rather quickly.
Oh, there was another one as well that's really good for PTSD.
Ayahuasca?
It might be ayahuasca. I'll plug it in at the bottom. Blah, blah, blah. There you go. And then, so pretty much, let's start on acetoketamine. Do you know much about it?
I've read a research report that ketamine has been beneficial for people with depression. That's sort of the big literature. I can't remember who did it. There was one in America, and then I think they did a rather closed trial in London because it's obviously an illegal substance.
Yeah, I've read the closed trial in London. Amazingly effective.
They had extreme results. The effect size was enormous, I believe.
It's crazy.
I read this like 2 years ago, so yeah.
I mean, it's continued. That research, there are 4 clinics in London currently doing acetoketamine. That's what they've called their London's version of this ketamine drug. It's called acetoketamine.
The American they've adapted it to make it a bit more legalised.
It's nasal spray.
Oh, I see.
Of ketamine. That's in that formulation. It's called acetoketamine. And massively effective. Its effect size was huge and very significant. And they did it for treatment-resistant depression, I think was their population.
Yeah, it was.
And oh my gosh, it was so cool. And when you like watch the videos of them doing the therapy while they're doing acetoketamine, it is so cool. It's crazy. So there's ones where so they take the pumps up their nose, and they sit there and they do a guided mindfulness to get them into a certain mind frame, and then they explore thoughts with pretty much a psychodynamic therapist, but it's very specific. It's more like a psychodynamic therapist that's doing motivational interviewing. And all they're doing is motivational interviewing.
Yeah. Just asking these open questions and sort of panning out.
Yeah, more reflection than open questions. And it was so cool. Like, they were just coming out with exactly how they were feeling, with no
barriers.
No barriers, no assumptions, no.
Do you think
thoughts.
that's still consentful though?
Well, in the study they had consented towards it.
Yeah.
I think it's about building up that relationship beforehand. I mean,
were they? Did they have prior sessions with the psychologist?
No.
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 Okay. I thought they might have had some priming sessions, maybe get to know each other, rapport building.
Nope. Nothing.
Straight out of the bat.
At least the therapy that I witnessed and read the article of, the paper of.
Some brave, or maybe desperate.
But they all, when at the end of the trial, they all wanted to keep going, other than two. Okay. They all wanted to keep going, but they couldn't. And they relapsed. Which, I mean, is a negative thing of the fact that they relapsed. Like, is being able to...
There's some ethical boundaries here.
But these are people with treatment-resistant depression. These are people that have tried their entire life, tried every single thing ever that the NHS can throw at them to try and make them feel better. Nothing works. All the medications, all the therapy, nothing works. They try this one new thing. They have 6 sessions of it, and they're happy. They can talk to their kids. They've come downstairs and cooked a meal for the first time in years. Or they've managed to go outside and go for a walk with their family for the first time. Since their daughter was born or whatever. And you read the stories and I'm like, oh my God, this could change so many lives. We just need to speed it up, man. Come on. Get their act together.
So how does that process evolve then?
More, as you're saying, RCTs really. And the stigma around society's perception of drugs, and more so mental health medication, and more so what's the word that I'm looking for, psychedelics. I mean, we're not getting into political stuff, but you look at why psychedelics were banned and stuff, and you're thinking, what a load of bollocks. And it's prevented this innovation for so long, and it's good now that we can start to
slowly explore it.
But that starts with legality. It starts with these drugs being moved from whatever the classification is in the UK. Is it class 1 or is it class A?
I think it's class A, isn't it?
Yeah.
Class A is top level contraband, basically.
So currently there's class A, class B, class C, and I'm pretty sure class A it's
illegal for possession and use, isn't it? Stuff like
and there's no research benefit, no medical benefits, so it doesn't.
Or so they claim.
Yeah, so you can't be prescribed those drugs. And then there's class B, where it's illegal to possess it, but there's medical grounds, so you could be prescribed it and you can research it. And then there's C or whatever, and I don't really know. But
isn't marijuana quite high up that grade in the UK?
Yeah, I think it's now class B. It was in A.
And just think about alcohol, and that is completely legal with no benefit whatsoever, and that sort of the Dutch courage aspect of it being this anxiety reducer has been debunked, and that's something that I talked about in my addiction essay, is that it doesn't reduce anxiety. It's just a complete myth that it's sort of this courageous.
So why does it feel like that then? A little bit.
My hypothesis is that you're braver, not less anxious.
Okay.
Is that you're still aware. So like, you'd say that jaywalking was quite common when you're on alcohol. You might jump over a bin or run around the roads or whatever late at night when you're on alcohol, doing stupid stuff, and maybe you'll jump off a big brick wall or something that you'd never do sober. And it's not that you become desensitized to risk. I think it's that you become braver, and that's not anxiety reducing. You're just braver.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because these are two different measures. Is that bravery isn't necessarily less anxious, and less anxious isn't necessarily more bravery. So these are two different things, and that you're still aware of the consequences, and that you're jumping off this big brick wall, you may hurt yourself, but at the time of being intoxicated, you don't care. You're braver. You're still aware that you could hurt yourself.
Yeah. But, oh, fuck it.
Yeah.
Let's have a good time,
You're braver. And you also see this with sleeping. People think that a little bit of alcohol, I'll have 2 fingers of whiskey and I'll be out like a light after that.
It's true that it helps you get to sleep, but it doesn't, then your sleep pattern disrupted, right?
Sort of. It's a mixed case. Is that taking alcohol for some people can be beneficial to help you get... I'm sorry, this is a rather big tangent, isn't it?
It's fine. Yeah, fair enough.
So, this is self-medication, or people presume to be self-medication. And the self-medication hypothesis of addiction is basically that you engage in said behaviour in order to get said outcome, because it'll help you. So, the alcohol reduces anxiety, alcohol can make you fall asleep. And they took insomnia addicts.
Yeah.
And
insomnia addicts.
Yes.
They're addicted to no sleep.
No. They had insomnia,
but
were addicted to alcohol.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry.
Who had a substance use disorder and had comorbid insomnia, or what some of them found was that they were drinking and then got insomnia. Is that actually made them worse? And so this study was fantastic and basically found that these people who were claiming to self-medicate and going, I need a drink, helps me get to sleep, actually had poorer sleep for quality and duration.
Yeah.
Who were apparently self-medicating for it in the first place. And it was largely significant that this wasn't the case at all, and that alcohol definitely impeded sleep completely, and it in no way was beneficial, and that it was just a complete lie.
Okay.
And that it was just...
So it's just a placebo. That initially helping you get to sleep is a placebo.
Yes. Because the average length of time it takes to fall asleep is 7 minutes. Which seems incredibly quick. But if you lay in bed, close your eyes and attempt to get to sleep, it's rather accurate. Screens, blue light, etc., and alcohol, all these other stimuli that we think may help or whatever, or like reading. Yeah. To an extent, reading. I don't know the literature on that, but for me, reading, I read non-fiction, and so it keeps me widely awake because my mind is running on this non-fiction book, on whatever it may be, on something ridiculous, graphology or whatever, or something.
Some riveting stuff.
Exactly. And you think, this must be boring, but because it's new information and it's not fictitious. I'm so engaged, it doesn't help me fall asleep.
Yeah, God, I want to learn about graphs.
Although a massive tangent is sort of the self-medication thing is sort of a lie, and alcohol isn't great.
And which is why, like, all these new drugs that are being pushed through, new medications, let's not call them drugs, need to be controlled. Mm-hmm. And it can't be another alcohol where people use it how they
Which is legalised and has no benefit whatsoever, yeah.
It's a load of bollocks.
I think, I don't know if you watch this, but Huberman's episode on alcohol that is 3 hours long of him just talking to you about alcohol will put you off it completely.
Is that why you don't drink?
I've not watched it.
Yeah, don't watch it.
Make me even worse.
Yeah.
I also saw something from ages ago that talked about all the negative effects of alcohol as well. Jordan Peterson and Theo Von, the comedian, he talks about...
He was a big alcoholic.
He was a massive addict, yeah. I think he was addicted to cocaine and alcohol. And he said it was part of his persona and stuff. And that he felt like he had to because he was a stand-up who was doing late-night gigs and stuff. And
it's crazy.
Yeah. Sorry, this is complete
Don't
tangent.
apologise.
Just getting
but it's interesting.
down the rabbit hole of how bad alcohol is and how all these unfairly banned drugs...
I'm going to link it very slightly to, okay, in future, would you say that maybe alcohol needs to be banned? Or, and we're going to say this very briefly.
Is this too political?
This is why I want it to be brief. Would you say no, yes or no?
Alcohol to be banned?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm a no.
Bam, bam, bam. In Dubai, it's banned.
Okay, we won't get into it.
Sorry,
Next.
United Arab Emirates, it's banned. I don't know, I picked Dubai, the city. The country.
Yeah, I didn't know
It's
it
banned.
was a thing. It was just a city until not too long ago.
Oh, really?
Like the World Cup or whatever.
Yeah, they go, oh, where did you go? Dubai. Okay, what country is that? Dubai. No, mate.
Literally so many
So
people.
readily.
Yeah. But anyway, I wonder if that's because they want to dissociate themselves to the country of that United Arab Emirates. That they've initially...
That was like their own identity.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Like they've... As to like...
That's for another podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be cool.
Tune into the next episode.
Yeah. Okay, back to it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Talk to me about psilocybin.
Okay,
Because we've not
psilocybin
mentioned that.
is the
We've done a bit
chemical
of ketamine.
compound of mushrooms that makes you trip.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of them, probably the main one, the one that's being currently used in therapies.
Psilocybin I find really interesting. I was doing loads of reading and research about this probably 6 years ago,
Right.
when it was sort of like bubbling away at, this could be something interesting,
Yeah.
this could be beneficial. And I was listening about people who were using it as a pain relief, and people who were using it for all sorts of things, sort of like chronic back pain, people with cancer, microdosing psilocybin, people who are like psilocybin maxing for all sorts of other benefits and stuff like that. And just sort of, I found it so interesting how it was able to hit so many spectra.
So many. It's crazy. I think we were reading the same stuff around the same time. You know, because they're literally the kind of things that I was looking at. Was the chronic pains, it was the cancer, and it was the intensive therapies, like the intensive intrusive thoughts of depression, anxiety, etc., etc., etc. But the only thing it didn't, like literature saying it doesn't work with, is like personality disorders, that kind of thing. If you've got split identities or have confusion with your identity, it doesn't particularly work.
What I wanted to ask you is this running before we can walk?
No.
You think so?
What was
Because
talking about psilocybin?
No. The third wave therapies, they're not so integrated. They're under-researched. We've talked about how bulimia and eating disorders are monopolised, and that even stuff like CBT therapy is monopolised and under-researched in something as common as eating disorders and as common as CBT. And yet we're talking about psilocybin, acetylketamine. Is that running before we can walk? Do you think you're jumping the gun?
What?
Do you think we shouldn't focus on that at the moment?
As in...
I'm talking industry-wise, not podcast-wise.
Why the hell wouldn't we focus on it?
Like I said, are we not jumping the gun?
No.
Are we not going gung-ho crazy? Is that we're now
Go
looking...
gun-ho crazy, man. Go wild. Figure this shit out.
But I'm saying, but the foundation is so poor. It's like the foundation
Stuff
is
the
rotting
foundation
away,
will.
and you're concerned about the roof.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about... Let's talk
see
about
what
the
I'm getting at?
foundation.
I'm sort of being devil's advocate, because I agree we should look at stuff like this. But for the sake of asking...
Okay,
like,
I'll explain why I think
it's
my way
so,
then.
like, the foundation of everything, of psychology,
Yeah.
the whole... All RCTs, everything is so under-researched and so fragile and sort of holding on thin ice. And, we're, as a population, are considering stuff that is so beyond our comprehension. Is it not crazy?
No. Because...
Do you think innovation is more important than doubling down?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry.
I
go on.
think society will constantly innovate. And to deny our brains to push science would be silly, right? Why the hell wouldn't you want to figure out new stuff? Doesn't matter if that new stuff is in the foundation.
I guess
If that's just boring, don't research it. Find something you're interested to research about. The world's huge. There are so many different ways of helping people. We need to separate our resources, and
everyone's focusing on their own thing.
Yeah.
And we're all trying to push the boundaries of
Together.
our own specialty. Yeah.
for the same reason. That's the beautiful thing about it, is that we are like, we need to still be seen as a community that's trying to improve our field, and not be like, oh, those bloody geezers over there talking about psilocybin,
messing about with mushrooms,
or taking our resources away. And I could have mastered CFT if those people weren't researching.
And yet maybe one
psilocybin.
RCT on psilocybin finds that it reduces tumour sizes massively with a large effect size. It could be the priming factor for all the resources to then move there, because it's amazing and it works. So yeah, innovation is the key.
100%. Yeah, well, I'm glad we're on the same page. I was worried for a second then.
It does annoy me slightly. It sort of frustrates me. I agree, innovation is completely the key, otherwise we wouldn't be at ChatGPT, which is obviously going to have millions of use cases for thousands of industries. But it does frustrate me when I look at the literature that's out there now and look at what's being ideated, and that they sort of are so far apart. It's very frustrating.
Yeah.
And we're speaking about, again, not to bring this up loads, but the bulimia studies, and that there's only 4 RCTs for adolescents on bulimia nervosa.
Yeah. I mean, I was looking at...
And yet...
Yeah, sorry.
and yet there's these acetyl-ketamine trials and stuff like that, and that it's frustrating that we can't be building a stronger base while continuing this innovation.
I agree.
Is that we're running away with it all, rather than, come on, let's get the basics so like complete and sorted and strong and rigid, and continue with this innovation rather than sort of being sparse on all fronts. And that sort of frustrates me, is that how can we not just have at least one RCT published each year for bulimia or something like that?
That is shocking.
How poor is that just for anything, that an RCT for depression, that there isn't multiple, something that's the most common disorder, is that how come we don't have at least 2 internationally published a year with different treatments and stuff? And yet,
shocking.
And yet we're discussing whether psilocybin and acetyl-ketamine. Do you know what I mean?
But that's why it's exciting, right?
True, I agree.
I mean, that's why... I mean, there isn't that many on CBT, really.
No, there isn't.
I mean, you're looking at the most commonly used therapy worldwide.
Yep, that's treatment as usual for just
pretty much everywhere. Yeah, other than like counselling, it's the most used therapy.
And private practice, I presume.
Yeah. But like, you're looking at that and you're thinking, oh, there isn't actually that much research out there. I think
that motivates me and upsets me.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah. So, I think that I've lost my train of thought a little bit.
Sorry.
It's okay.
About...
I was going to... A similar thing in bibliotherapy. Like, I experienced, like, when I was researching bibliotherapy, I was like, yeah, there was going to be tons. One woman, Liz Brewster from Keele, I think. It's definitely not Keele. A university in the UK has done all the research on bibliotherapy.
She deserves so much more respect than that, Alex.
I'm so sorry, Liz Brewster. But I've requested to connect with you on LinkedIn. So if you read
An
this,
absolute legend.
You are a legend.
The bibliotherapy aspect.
My dissertation would be wank without you. So thank you for that. Anyway, psilocybin is amazing. It has loads of really good clinical effects and should be cool. And also you can microdose it and it's super effective. And you can do the big ass trips and it's also super effective. And the fact that it works for so many different disorders is really cool. Just because we're going on probably quite a long time now, I kind of want to move on to tell you about this study, which is called
Go on, tell me about this study.
They've been mapping the brain, as we know, which in my head is the biggest leap in psychology that will happen in our lifetime, is they will finish mapping the human brain. And what the hell that means, I'm not quite sure.
I think that for validating psychology as a science is also massive.
Yes, I agree.
That's a leap.
Because we're going to be able to prove everything. You're going to be like, well, this thought triggers that thing in the brain. and watch it happen on a screen?
I read about this with aggression. So they've already mapped it for aggression, and that you can stimulate it.
Yeah.
Is that they did it in some sort of rodent or animal first.
The rat.
Was it? I know that's very common, but I can't remember if it was. I feel like I would have known if it was a rat. Okay. But anyway, regardless, they did the study, and what they did was they stimulated this very specific known area in the brain. I think I'd like to say that it was a neuron. So it was that specific, or at that level. It wasn't just a section or a region. It was right down to that level of being a neuron, and they stimulated it, and that it caused immediate aggression, and that was what aggression was caused.
That's so cool.
Ticking, basically, just as it being like a switch. It was on or off, and they stimulated it, and it immediately became aggressive. I think I might have talked about this, but they put the rodent or the animal in an enclosure with they had a male and a female, and they triggered the aggression in the male, and the two rodents were actually mating, and when they stimulated the aggression, the rat or rodent immediately stopped and killed the female, and so.
Bloody no, yeah.
Yeah, and it immediately went like full aggression, like savagely attacked the female and killed her. Yeah, and that they've completely located it down to the neuron.
That is
which is
so cool.
Amazing, and I believe they have done this study in humans as well.
It wouldn't surprise me.
Because they've completely located that region, which is fantastic. And I'll have to find out what they did on the humans, but I know it was rather interesting. They stimulated this aggression, and there were some other factors that were involved, and they looked at certain variables and stuff, and it was so interesting. Sort of with the aggression thing, how it was turned on and off with the completely aggressive and killed the other animal, is that sort of similar things were attributed in the humans, but that it could be turned off easily, and then they go back to.
Oh my gosh! So like you could just like if somebody was like in prison. You could like say, yeah, we can release this person to society again because we can stop them from being aggressive.
Because they could nerf, or it might.
You could just take away that neuron.
Yeah, or they might have a gene modification that makes it hypersensitive. Yeah. And the research article that was looking at this sort of mentioned within the discussion is that maybe it could be attributed to some school shooters. Is that they might have a hypersensitive one. Or that it might have been anything, that a brain injury might cause it to be constantly on, and that they're hyper aggressive. Snowy's hair's gotten in my chest.
Snowy.
Oh, hey, little buddy. And so they were trying to derive whether this could be a reason for school shooters.
Is so interesting.
And that maybe that it's not a nurture, and that it might have been a nature. And the same goes for. Serial killers and psychopaths, is that if you look far enough back, was it nurture, or can we derive it to be a bit of both? Nature, or maybe it was initially nature and then it's turned on through nurture.
I agree. I think the study, that was such an interesting thing, and oh my god, I would love to talk about it more. But the study that I read to kind of do with that the brain mapping thing was they did it. It was on rats. And they had this really complicated system of like getting the rat to drink water, and it was like they had to do a task to get it to do water. Required
effort, yeah.
Yeah, and so they were teaching this rat to do the task, and it had because they've mapped. They were one of the first animals that they mapped the brain of. They've completely mapped the brain of a rat. Right. So that when it thinks or feels certain things, you can track it. And you can correlate that to a neuron in the brain. And so they taught this rat this task, and then once it had learnt it, they took the sequence of neurons.
Oh, they're going to say that they removed it and it completely forgot it or something?
No. Go on. Even cooler. They then took a fresh rat, put it in the same cage, fired those neurons in the same sequence, and it instantly knew how to do the task. Yeah. How crazy is that? Wow. And it was a dementia study to like so that you could refire memories.
Wow. That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Because to think that dementia is sort of you only hold on to... We got like 2 minutes left, Snowy. So the dementia aspect, I think that's amazing. I'm really interested. You bastard! Is that it? So the dementia aspect, I'm really interested in. I think it's so interesting and about, as well as like stuff for facial recognition.
Yeah.
And I think that's amazing because this is all brain, this is all neuro based. Yeah. I think that's amazing.
Could you imagine if like you could press a button, right, as like a family member, and they would recognise all the memories of you and your face and your name?
Flooding back in with everything that had been sort of closed off initially through dementia. Yeah.
How crazy would that be?
Yeah, and also with addiction. So you've got insensitive sensitization, which is where you go from liking alcohol to wanting alcohol, and that's also a process in the brain through dopamine pathways, and that you could map that in the brain basically, and that you could turn it off so that people who were biologically addicted through dopamine pathways, you could turn it off and they would stop. Because you see that a lot with that. Again, I'm back on the alcohol route again, sorry. But
I'm so sorry.
They when people become addicts, they actually confess that they stop liking alcohol. Is that they drink, they're on cocktails, stuff that they like, fruity things, sweet things, lovely things, and then as they become addicts, you actually find that they have no preference for alcohol whatsoever.
They drink beer and things,
and that it's or that it's only strong things. They only drink vodka straight because it's 40%. And you go, why are they doing that? Because they clearly don't like alcohol, because they're only drinking whiskey because it's high in alcoholic percentage, or that they started off with gin and tonics, and now this single middle-aged mother is now having a bottle of rum every night because it's 38%. And you go, okay, there's a dissociation between liking and wanting through addiction. Yeah. And that these neural pathways, you could turn that off.
So cool.
And then they'd no longer have this brain, this dopamine centered addiction. I think that's so cool.
How quickly do you think, once they've mapped the brain, do you think an AI will be able to process that kind of thing?
Immediately.
Yeah. It is so
to draw full circle, eh?
Yeah. It is so cool.
Immediately train that onto the AI.
Yeah.
And that's opened up a world of possibilities.
It's insane.
I think that's a fantastic.
But would you trust an AI to manage your brain?
Yes. Because it goes back to the efficient market of economics. Is that it's that old chest. Way to bore you guys. No,
I get you. Yeah, I don't think I would, but that's my only personal opinion.
Okay. Is that because you have a control aspect?
It's because I think that, and this is all, I don't think that suffering is a bad thing, and that uncomfortable and negative thoughts is a bad thing.
Okay, so it would try why are you so right. That I agree with that. I agree, because that's when people say that happiness should be a state, and that I don't agree with that either. I think it's an emotion, and that you don't always want to be happy. Yeah, I agree, 100%. That's probably for another episode.
Yeah, and then control things like the government's listening. It's controlling my mind.
Okay,
yeah.
Wonderful.
But anyway, yeah, this has been a great chat. We could probably go on for way longer if you wanted to, but we'll stop it here.
Yeah.
Sound good?